Hello on this hot Saturday. How are
Hello.
you?
I am melting.
Yes, I feel the same. And my lungs are really hurting for some
Oof.
reason, and my trachea. I think because the street outside, they've been milling it and repaving it, so there's probably a lot of particles
Yeah, that'll do it.
that I'm breathing in, and I work from home 2 days a week, so
Ugh.
so it's nice to escape.
Yes.
Um, Welcome to Goodnight, Mr. Holmes, a podcast about the Granada. We had this discussion. What do we say? Granada, Sherlock Holmes, which ran on ITV in the UK between 1984 and 1994, and ran on Masterpiece Mystery in the US around the same time. I am Laura,
And I'm Rachel.
and today we are looking at episode 19 in the series, which is called The Six Napoleons.
The story was first published in Collier's in 1904.
So I just have to say, the opening of each show, I never skip it. The theme music, the scenes, I just feel like it's so grounding. You're about to enter this world of Edwardian London and have a good time. And here's the door, and it's the same every single time. So it's just this. I never skip openings because it's consistency.
Yeah.
So this episode opens with a young woman wearing a white nightgown, washing herself at a basin in front of a big window, which is wide open. She's got
I have the note. She's washing herself in a 1980s way, meaning the character is just putting water on herself to try to get cool, it looks like.
Yeah.
But because this was the 1980s, it's very sexy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. She's got amazing skin. And she's got this huge yellow sponge. And the water's like running down over her skin and hair and drenching the nightgown, and she's like licking the water off. And
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can almost hear the porn music.
right. So the camera pulls back. We're hearing Italian voices yelling in the background. An older man is watching through the window across the street as this young woman washes. Apparently, she's putting on a show for him.
To be fair, I guess it is better than the show that's going on in his living room right now.
Yes, exactly. Because the camera pulls into the house across the street, and we see the people who are arguing. It's a man and a woman. The man standing over the woman, yelling at her in Italian.
Yes, the only thing I could recognize was that he was calling her whore.
Yes, over and over again. Yeah.
Which was why I spent most of this episode, despite having seen this episode multiple times, thinking that they were husband and wife.
Yes, that it is very confusing, but they're not.
They are not.
So the house is filled with gorgeous furniture and paintings, and it's very clear that there's wealth here. And the yelling man is in a really nice suit, although, I was like, he's going to rip it because he's contorting himself with rage.
I think they had a little more room than the dresses women wore.
Yeah, well, that too.
The sleeves were incredibly tight on those dresses.
So the woman, we come to understand, is Lucrezia. And she's played by Marina Sirtis, who went on to play Counselor Troy in Star Trek: The Next Generation, who was like the hottest character in that show. And
That's awesome.
She's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman. She's got this dark hair, curly. The man, Pietro, slaps the woman. He continues yelling, and then he starts to shake her, and he draws back to hit her again. But then the older man turns away from the window and yells at the younger one to stop. And again, the younger man is wild with rage, just screaming, "Putana, putana, putana." He runs out of the house, and Lucrezia screams, "Pietro," after him, and she turns towards the camera, and we see that she's bleeding at the mouth where he had slapped her. And in a way, this is the typical English kind of put down of anyone who's not English. Italians in this view are excitable, passionate, yelling a lot, using their hands a lot.
They're excitable, like the Welsh.
Yes, it's hugely stereotypical. Pietro runs down the street with one final putana.
Very, very dramatically. I mean, it's almost like
right. Yes. And he gets into a cart and he's urging the driver onward, to the astonishment of everyone around them. They pull up to some kind of warehouse with a big sign on it saying Gelder and Company. Men are moving around large sacks. There's straw all over the road. Pietro starts yelling out for a man named Beppo. And Beppo appears. He's in workman's clothing and pulls out a knife. Pietro pulls out a knife and they fight, surrounded by workmen cheering them on. It's not quite the Jets versus the Sharks in West Side Story, but it's that kind of a scene.
It's sort of like what happens in my house when one cat starts smacking another and they sort of get into a smack fight, and then all the other cats come and run and look.
It's entertainment. Yeah. So as the cops are coming, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. As the cops are coming, Beppo stabs Pietro in the gut and races inside the Gelder and Company warehouse. And it's filled with ceramics, notably shelf after shelf of busts of Napoleon. Beppo throws a couple of these at the cops, while the owner, who's dressed quite nicely in a tailcoat with a watch chain, he comes out in surprise. Beppo pushes a whole shelf, a whole like case of the ceramics at the cops, and the owner's looking horrified at the loss of his inventory.
Beppo shouts, I believe he shouts porco. He's calling the cops pigs.
Yes. And running around the warehouse just absolutely like insanely. And we see these other Italianate figurines and pieces that are meant to look like ruins. Beppo runs into a little room off the side and he closes the door. So the owner and the police start slamming at the door with a sledgehammer. When the door opens, Beppo jumps out on top of the owner. Like he's it's the craziest scene. He's laughing maniacally as the cops wrestle him into a straitjacket, which they just happen to have on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that that's part of the typical Bobby uniform, but they're straightforward thinking.
And they carry Beppo out to the paddy wagon. Then we're back at Pietro's house, where the older man, presumably Lucrezia's father, is tearing apart a photograph with Lucrezia on one side and another man on the other side. And I didn't realize till later, but we are supposed to know this. The other man is Beppo.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him there.
I mean, he's very well groomed in the photo.
Right.
He's very, very not.
He's not laughing maniacally. I spent part of this episode being very confused.
Yes. Yeah. So he hands the half with Beppo along with a silver dagger to Pietro. And we're meant to understand that Beppo has to die and Pietro has to do the killing. It's a very mafia-like scene with symbolic actions and fancy weapons and, again, more stereotyping.
Yes.
Lucrezia is watching all of this happen. Pietro kisses the dad's hand as she looks on, and then she says, "Assassino."
Kill him.
Yeah. Then, well, assassino actually, I think it's an accusation. You're an assassin.
Yeah, but she clearly wants the guy dead.
See, that was the part that was confusing to me. I thought they were lovers.
They were, but I got the impression that once he knifed Pietro, she was done with him.
Okay.
And also because of the thing that he had done that got Pietro angry, which we will find out later.
Yes. So next we see these Napoleon sculptures, fully painted now, ugly as crap. Looking nothing like Napoleon, being packed into a box with straw around them to keep them from breaking. And the address on the box is for Mr. Morse Hudson, a purveyor of fine arts and ceramics. In 221B, Holmes and Watson are sitting comfortably slouched with Lestrade on the couch. And that couch, it's like a wicker couch. It's not particularly comfortable looking.
No, I can't imagine it's particularly stable if it's wicker.
Yeah. Yeah, because wicker, usually the stabilizing pieces are bamboo.
Yeah.
They're all smoking, which I'm sure is a great thing if you're sitting in a wooden chair. And
yeah, they're all clearly just hanging out.
Right. Watson has a glass of whiskey and he just kind of says, anything remarkable on Lestrade? And Lestrade says, nothing in particular. Holmes is reading some kind of folio and he lowers it and smiles and says, then tell us about it. And Lestrade and Watson are grinning at this. Now you come to mention it, Mr. Holmes, there's no denying there is something on my mind. At this, Holmes drops the folio with a gesture that looks like utter satisfaction. It first came to my notice 4 days ago. A certain Morse Hudson has a shop in the sale of pictures and statues in the Kennington Road. And we see the shop filled with figurines and artwork and a Napoleon statue on the desk. And then we see a hand smashing it to bits with a hammer. But what happened last night was more serious and also more singular, Lestrade says. Burglary, says Holmes. Again, we see a hand reaching out for another Napoleon statue, this one on a mantelpiece. And this one's stuffed into a bag. The thief leaves wherever he's at, closes the door, and smashes the bag against the iron railing outside of the building and dumps the broken pieces on the doorstep. The house of a Dr. Barnicot was broken into. Now, this bust was one of a pair purchased from Morse Hudson by Dr. Barnicot. He had put it in his house, and the other he put 2 miles away in his surgery, Lestrade says. Later that same night, and again, we see the hand destroying the Napoleon statue. This is certainly very novel, Holmes says. And Lestrade laughs at this. Yes, I thought it would please you, though in my opinion, it comes more into Dr. Watson's line than ours. What? Disease, Watson says, and he's tapping his temple. I should say madness, queer sort of madness, too. You wouldn't think there was anybody living nowadays, would you, that had such a hatred for Napoleon Bonaparte, Lestrade says.
Yeah, it is kind of odd that people in England are buying busts of Bonaparte to keep.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, clearly. Well, we do hear one reason late in the episode, but yeah, how do, because there were 6 in the package going to Morse Hudson. How does he have 6 customers for Napoleon statues?
Yeah. And the 6 were just 6 of many, many more.
Many, yeah. I mean, the warehouse was full of them.
How does most of Europe want busts of Napoleon?
Yeah, a huge flaw in the episode. Actually, there are no limits to the possibilities of monomania, Watson says. And he sits down next to Lestrade on the couch. You see, there's the condition that the modern French psychologists have called an idée fixe. Now, if someone becomes obsessed with, say, an injustice committed to an ancestor during the Napoleonic Wars, he might form an idée fixe. And under its influence, he might be capable of any fantastic outrage. As Watson is explaining this, Holmes has picked up his folio again. He's rolling his eyes while Watson talks. And then he slaps his folio back down into his lap and looks heavenward. My dear Watson, that won't do. And Watson shoots back. How do you explain it then? I don't attempt to do so, says Holmes. And Watson kind of elbows Lestrade here, as in, you see, I told you so. I would simply observe, continues Holmes, that there's a certain method in this gentleman's eccentric madness. For example, in Dr. Barnicot's house, where a sound might arouse the sleeping family, the bust was taken outside before being broken, whereas in the surgery, where there was less danger of alarm, it was smashed where it stood. And he gives this dismissive sniff, in a way only Jeremy Brett can, and turns back to his folio, and it's Watson's turn to roll his eyes. I only mention it because you usually have a taste for all that is out of the common, no matter how trivial, Lestrade says. I dare call nothing trivial, Lestrade. And some of my most classic cases have had the least promising commencement. Holmes is continuing like to be dismissive, reading that folio as if it like contains the instructions on how to find the fountain of youth or something. Yeah, that dreadful business with the Abernethy family, says Watson. And Holmes, like, he literally barks at this. Like,
yeah, he does.
I can hardly call the dismemberment of an entire family trivial. Watson, would you be so kind as to explain? And Watson does. It only came to Holmes's notice because of the depth to which the parsley had sunk into the butter on a hot day.
I want that story.
I know, me too. So I cannot afford to smile at your 3 busts, Lestrade. However, I would be obliged if you would keep me informed as to developments. So the next morning, a telegram boy, ambulance outside, is running to 221B. Watson gets it and brings it up to Holmes at the breakfast table. There are 2 coffee pots, one large and one smaller, in that lovely red and blue china that we were talking about last time. Watson hands the telegram to Holmes. It's from Lestrade with an instruction to come to an address in Kensington. What's it about? Holmes says. It could be anything, but I suspect...
Watson reads the telegram and Holmes is like, what's it about?
Right.
I just read you the whole thing. How would I know what it's about?
I suspect it's a sequel to his story last night. You know, my E-Day fix, says Watson. Finish your coffee. There's a cab at the door. And he points to Holmes. 2 minutes. Holmes chokes a little on his coffee because usually he's the one who's doing the rousting.
Yeah. As he will do later in this episode.
Yes, yes. And off they go to Kensington in a cab. As they pull up to the door, there's a ton of spectators standing outside, workmen, a few maids with their little white caps on, as well as another telegram boy, all impatiently waiting for something. The telegram boys are wearing these pillbox hats with straps, looking kind of like bellboys.
Yeah.
Used to in the hotels in the 1950s. Watson, it's attempted murder at least, Holmes says. Nothing less would hold a London message boy. There's a deed of violence in that young fellow's round shoulders and outstretched neck. I guess telegram boys like see a lot of stuff.
I guess.
They get out of the cab and go to the door. Look at this, Watson. The front steps swilled down and the others are dry. Footsteps enough, anyhow, says Watson. Yes, but whose? As they go inside to be greeted by Lestrade saying, it's the Napoleon bus business again. They smashed another, Watson says. I'm afraid the affair has taken a graver turn, Lestrade says. In this scene, the 3 of them are all facing one another. And I noticed that Lestrade's starched collar is very large. It comes all the way up to his chin. And it's got these rounded edges, not points. And Watson's is also rounded, but it's a lot smaller and it rests very neatly against his necktie. And Holmes, and I love this about him, he's wearing his usual like weird bow tie that he hides the bow parts under his collar. But yeah, it almost looks like a hair clip. But it's a bow tie. He's just kind of squinched it up and stuck the bulk of it under the points of his collar.
That's interesting. I had noticed in this episode that Lestrade kind of looked like he was punching into his shoulders, but it could have just been that collar.
Yeah, and it would be starched, so it'd be like wearing a huge piece of cardboard.
An Elizabethan collar.
Holmes's whole collar thing is hidden though, because he's got this enormous black knitted muffler around him. So he's prancing about in these incredible knits again. They go into a study. It's quite messy with books everywhere and papers and whatnot. And there's a nervous man pacing back and forth. Mr. Harker, allow me to present Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, Mr. Horace Harker of the Central Press Syndicate.
I looked up Central Press Syndicate. Nothing relevant came up in Google, but I don't know if that's because it's fictional or if it's just Google sucking these days.
Yeah. It's impossible to tell, honestly.
Genuinely.
Harker is attired in a black waistcoat with a watch chain, but he's also got a long robe over him, like the one Holmes wears around the house.
Dressing gown.
Dressing gowns, yeah, which apparently were for warmth back then, as well as to go over your nightshirt. Good of you to come, gentlemen. Forgive my agitation, Harker says. No apology necessary, Mr. Harker. A body on one's front doorstep is always unsettling, Holmes says. And Harker looks puzzled. You've told him then? Not a word, Lestrade says. He's very indignant. He spends a lot of time indignant in this episode. Yes. Holmes smiles. Now tell us exactly what has occurred. Extraordinary thing. All my life I've been collecting other people's news. Now I have a real life story of my own and I can't put two words together, Harker says. Harker is played by Eric Sykes, who's an actor who's partially deaf, but you would never know it in this episode. He's a former vaudevillian who had his own sitcom in the UK called Sykes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If I had been a journalist and walked through that door, I would have interviewed myself and had 2 columns in every London newspaper, Sykes continues. And here I am giving away valuable copy by telling my story over and over again to a string of different people. However, I've heard of your name, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. So if you could explain this queer business, I'd be more than paid for my trouble in telling you my story. And Holmes is looking at Sykes like he smells bad. Like, you're not, these are the wrong priorities. But he sits down to listen. A great deal of my journalistic work is done at night in my den in the room adjacent to this one, Sykes begins, at some time in the small hours of the morning. And then we see Sykes asleep at his desk with a burning candle, but the candle goes out. He wakes up and relights it and returns to his work, albeit sleepily. But he hears a man outside screaming. He gets up and he goes to the study door. He's very afraid, clearly, and sees the empty pedestal where the Napoleon statue had been standing on the mantelpiece. He goes outside to his stoop and almost trips over a dead man.
I loved that bit, actually.
Yeah, it was very well done.
Yeah.
And we see that it's Pietro, and his throat has been slit. He's bleeding profusely. Harker picks up the silver knife. It's the one Pietro was given to kill Beppo. I shall live that moment over and over again in my dreams, Harker says. Do we know who the murdered man was? Holmes says. Not yet, Lestrade tells him. Not yet, but you can see the body in the mortuary if you wish. Because it's a mortuary, everyone's welcome. Harker.
The Paris morgue used to be like a in the 19th century.
Yes, and what is it called in Paris where they have all the skulls and stuff in the sewers?
Oh, catacombs.
Yes, catacombs. Yeah, death is pretty public in Paris. Harker's leaving the room, but Holmes calls after him. Where did you purchase your bust, Mr. Harker? From Mr. Hudson of Kennington Road, Harker tells him. He sits back down at his desk among stacks of paper. Do we know what became of it? Holmes asks Lestrade. The officer at the door tells me it's been found in the front garden of an empty house in Campden House Road. I was just going around to see it. Will you come? In a moment, Holmes tells them, and he goes to the window.
I don't know if there's a Camden House Road, but there was a Camden House in Kensington that was built in the early 17th century.
Oh.
According to Shirley Nicholson, Victorian Web. The West Wing, which was called Little Camden House for some reason, was added at the end of the 17th century. Huh. The house was destroyed by fire in 1862 and the ruins were demolished in 1890. But Little Camden House survived until the 1960s, when it was taken down to make room for new housing estates, which is, I believe, what the British use for what we call housing projects, subsidized housing for low-income families.
Yep, council houses. The intruder had either very long legs or was the most active man, Holmes says. With that area beneath, it was no mean feat to climb up to this ledge, let alone to open the window. Harker is not paying attention to any of this. He's taking out his pen. He's beginning to write. And Holmes walks over to him with a half smile on his face. Mr. Harker, will you come with us to see the remains of your bust? I must make something of it, although I've no doubt every newspaper in London will be on the street with a full and detailed account. Just my luck. Do you remember when the stand fell down at Doncaster races? I was the only...
Doncaster, I'm interrupt briefly. Doncaster is in Yorkshire, and it's one of the oldest horse racing centers in Britain, with records going back to the 16th century.
Wow. That's very cool. So Harker says, I was the only journalist in that stand, and my journal was the only one that didn't have a published account because I was too shaken to write a word. And now I should be too late with a murder on my own doorstep. He starts writing again, and Holmes is looking at him with absolute contempt. Harker raises his head to see Holmes's expression, but he goes back to writing. Then Lestrade and Holmes and Watson are in the front garden of the house on Campden House Road. Holmes is crouched down, examining the fragments of the bust, and he stands up. Well, Lestrade says, we have a long way to go, but there is one suggestive fact. He didn't smash this in the house or immediately outside it, Holmes says. Well, perhaps he was so rattled and bustled by meeting this other fellow that he hardly knew what he was doing, Watson said. That's likely enough, says Lestrade, but why did he choose to destroy it outside this particular house?
I mean, he could have smashed it on Pietro's head and thus accomplished both goals at once.
Yeah, well, it's Arthur Conan Doyle. It doesn't have to make sense. They're walking past a for sale sign. So the answer as to why he chose to destroy it there is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
It's empty, so he knew he wouldn't be disturbed, Watson says. And they come onto the street. Holmes has gone on ahead of them. He's leaning against a lamppost. There's this gorgeous tree with pink blossoms behind him. These gardens are beautiful. I want to live in this street.
Well, they have a house for sale.
Yes, exactly. But there's another empty house further up the street he must have passed. Why not destroy it there, Lestrade asks. Watson looks over at Holmes, who's gesturing up at the lamp with his walking stick, smiling. The lamp, Watson says. By Jove, you're right. What are we to make of that? Lestrade says. And Watson looks over at Holmes again. Remember it. Docket it, Holmes says. We may come on something later which will bear upon it. Meanwhile, before we go our separate ways, I suggest we make one last concerted visit. Where to? Watson asks. The morgue.
So, I mean, yeah, I've seen this before and I know the story, but at this point, even if I didn't know the story, I'd start thinking that the burglar was looking for something inside one of these busts. Like, that's why he's smashing it. Like, that's...
Yeah.
There's not really any other explanation.
Exactly. Yes. And also, this remember it, docket it. We may come upon something which may later bear upon it. They don't. The issue of the lamp is a non-starter.
Well, yeah. The lamp is just so that he could see what was inside it.
Yeah. Exactly. At the morgue, a trembling hand with a large signet ring is pulling back a sheet, and we see Pietro with coins on his closed eyes, cotton stuffed in his ear, and a horrific scar across his throat. And this hand belongs to the older mafioso, who's crossing himself and weeping. But he's gone when our trio arrive, and Lestrade says they've made nothing.
This was bad editing.
Yeah, incredibly. They've made nothing of his identity up to now. He was poorly dressed, but doesn't seem to be a laborer. I mean, I have to think that the mafioso is Pietro's father.
Yeah.
And that Lucrezia is his sister.
Yeah.
Whoever's responsible did a nasty job on the fellow's throat, Watson says, always king of the obvious. That was the murder weapon. Had a serrated blade, though whether it belonged to the murderer or the dead man, we don't yet know, Lestrade says. Anything in his pockets to help identify him, Watson asks. Precious little, if it might interest you, Holmes. Forgive me, Lestrade, I was just contemplating the one mystery that not even I can solve. Death itself. I mean, he's fatuous sometimes. Pray continue. Okay, Holmes, you go and be like a Hamlet and contemplate a skull. Honestly. As you can see, he carried very little, Lestrade says. He's holding up this chipped enamel bowl. An apple, some string, a shilling map of London, and a photograph.
I like to play hidden object adventure games. And
Yes.
it sounds like the inventory for the player character in one of those games.
Yes.
Random crap.
Yeah, exactly. But it all means something.
You'll use this somewhere.
He hands it to Watson, and the photograph is the sliced up picture, only of Beppo. Well, part of one, it's torn, Watson observes. He brings it over to Holmes, who, by the way, has rested his walking stick on the legs of the dead man. I mean, I guess he's dead. He might as well serve as part of the furniture.
I guess.
And then Watson says, ugly looking devil, positively simian, he says. Racist much?
Yeah, I didn't find anything specific about prejudice against Italians in England in that era. But I did find that after the Napoleonic Wars, Northern Italy was faced with a lot of destruction.
Yes.
There was a wave of Italian immigrants into England, and people from Lucca, Lucca, specialized in plaster figure making.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But we know that when there are waves of immigrants into England,
there is prejudice. Yeah.
Huge prejudice. You know, we'll see this over and over again, not in this series, but, you know, like we see it in Call the Midwife when the Windrush ships come over carrying people from the Caribbean. Massive prejudice. And actually, that they tried to deport one of the Windrush refugees during Boris Johnson's administration, and they finally got him back to England, but it was a huge scandal.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, it's ugly stuff.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the man in the photograph is not Simeon. He's a very handsome Italian guy. What steps do you propose next, Lestrade? Holmes walks up to the corpse, and he's leaning over the face, looking at him very closely. He looks like he might kiss him. He's hanging over him.
It's not like he finds out anything. Like, this doesn't lead anywhere.
Yes, it's just, yeah. Well, the most practical way of getting at it, says Lestrade, in my opinion, is to identify the dead man. Once we know who he is,
obviously,
and who his associates are, we should have a good start in learning who killed him on the doorstep of Mr. Horace Harker. Don't you think so, Mr. Holmes? No doubt, says Holmes, straightening up. It's not the way I would conduct the case. What would you do, Lestrade says.
Who needs to know who the dead person is?
Let me influence you. I suggest you follow your line of inquiry and I mine. Then we can compare notes and each supplement the other. But if you are returning to Pitt Street, I would be grateful if you would tell Mr. Harker that I have quite made up my mind in this matter, Holmes says. And he's picking up the dead man's hand. He's examining, like looking at the fingernails and everything.
And he was struggling picking it up. So,
yeah.
Like,
mortis. Yeah. I am certain that it was a dangerous, homicidal lunatic with Napoleonic delusions at his house last night. And he puts the man's hand down and covers it with the sheet. You don't seriously believe that, Watson says, immediately jettisoning his own theory of the E-Day fix. Don't I? Well, perhaps not. And Holmes whips out a huge magnifying glass and goes back to examining the corpse's throat injury and face.
And it's photographed so that you can see Holmes's mouth like centered in it.
Yes. I'm sure it will please Horace Harker and the subscribers to the Central Press Agency. I would be grateful, Lestrade, if you could make it convenient to come round to Baker Street at 6 o'clock this evening. Until then, I would like to keep this photograph found in the dead man's pocket. Oh, Mr. Holmes, that might be a vital clue. Lestrade is protesting. He's holding out his hand for the photograph. I trust it is. Otherwise, it's of no interest to me, Holmes says.
And then he leaves with it because chain of custody regarding evidence doesn't
exist. Yeah.
No, you can't walk off with part of our case.
Meanwhile, Lestrade bends over the corpse, trying to see whatever Holmes saw in the dead man's face.
I like to think Holmes knew nothing would be there, and he was just doing this to fuck with Lestrade.
Yes. 1,000% yes. At Mr. Hudson's on Kennington Street, Watson is face to face with a bust of some kind of Roman like emperor or something. It's a great shot cinematically, like the two of them are facing one another. The proprietor is complaining about having to pay taxes while ruffians can walk in and break one's goods under one's nose. A superb bit of craftsmanship it was, too, taken from a marble copy of The Emperor's Head by Devine. Are you familiar, by any chance, with that great artiste's oeuvre?
Yeah, just try Googling that because it's close to divine. It's Devine is how close captions. Like, just try Googling that and see how well you do.
Yes.
There is a famous bust of Napoleon by Antonio Canova done in the early 19th century, but that's not
this.
Yeah.
And it also isn't a superb bit of craftsmanship. It is ugly as fuck.
Yeah.
Hudson.
It does look better once it's painted, and I don't normally say that about sculpture.
I know, yeah. Hudson is wearing, I love this, it's truly impressive embroidered waistcoat and florid ascot, like a silk waistcoat with embroidery. Clearly, he's meant to be artistic, but also pretentious.
Yeah, he comes across like Michael Palin playing a character in Monty Python.
Yes. So he's all, are you familiar with this great artist? Ugh. And Holmes says, yes, indeed, like completely dismissing him. Speaking of familiarity, do you recognize the man in this photograph? And he holds out the photo. The name's Beppo, Mr. Hudson says. Yes, he was a sort of Italian piecework man who made himself useful here in the shop. Oh, he could carve a bit and frame and gild. I took him on about 10 days ago, but he only stayed a week and then disappeared. Didn't even collect his wages. Perhaps he was responsible for the breakages, Watson says. And Hudson goes completely off the chain at this. This is an international conspiracy, a nihilist plot. Red Republicans, I call them.
Totally MAGA.
No one but an anarchist would go about breaking statues. Yeah, well, in the UK, Republican means something completely different.
And this isn't quite as off the wall as it sounds. There were a lot of political changes in mainland Europe in the 19th century. England stayed stable, mostly because it liked to deport its agitators to the colonies.
Yes, exactly. But yes, this is the beginning of there were a lot of Italian anarchists, and there were some in the US as well. I'm trying to think of who it was that was here. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, they exported anarchists all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Andrea Costa, Filippo Turati, Malatesta, Luigi Galliani. A lot of insurrectionists and because there were Italian immigrants like all over the place, in the US, in the UK, in South America, there's whole parts of Buenos Aires that, it looks like Palermo in Sicily. There's whole parts of Buenos Aires that have Italian names. Sacco Vanzetti, that's who I was trying to think of. Anyway. So he sounds unhinged, Hudson does, but it's not completely like.
Yeah, there's context for it.
Yeah, unheard of. Did they break everyone that you sold? Holmes says. Hardly that, just the two bought by a local doctor and the one left here in my shop. If anything happened to the other three, I know nothing of it, Hudson says. So there were 6 to begin with, Watson says. A batch of 6, Hudson says. I ordered them specially from Gelder and Company of Stepney. They do excellent molding work. And Hudson's kind of like this dithering, kind of stammering man. I'm not conveying his manner of speaking very well, and I'll try to do it better as we go on. But he's just
Michael Palin doing a Monty Python.
Yes. Do you happen to know the names and addresses of the other customers? Holmes asks. And Hudson squints. My ledgers, Mr. Holmes, are confidential. Holmes gets psychologically persuasive. and smiles and, does these gestures to him. Mr. Hudson, if your theory is correct, oughtn't we to warn these people of this most dangerous plot? And who better to do that than Mr. Sherlock Holmes? Watson chimes in. Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Yes, quite right, sir. Yes, the country slumbers, but we shall remain vigilant. Follow me, sir. And he takes them to his desk where he finds the names of the other purchasers. Yes, here we are, Mr. Josiah Brown of Chiswick and Miss Sandalford of Reading. Mrs. Holmes is writing down. Mr. Hudson, Watson beckons him over. Did your two busts differ in any way from the other four? Differ from the other four? No, they were all identical and all with a beautiful decoration, which I ordered especially, Hudson says.
Yeah, I think by decoration he means painting.
The painting, yeah. But I also feel like he's using like 4 words were 2 words.
Yes.
Apart from the decoration, were your 6 busts all the same as the others? Hudson asks again. Hudson is irritated. The same as all the others? Well, I suppose so. But you'd have to apply direct to Gelder and Company to find that out in person. Excellent idea, Holmes says, brushing past him on the way out the door. Gentlemen, when you meet the manager, would you be good enough to warn him of the conspiracy? With all the busts they have on the premises, the Red Republicans could have a field day. Hudson hasn't had this much of a thrill in ages. Holmes smiles a little bit, and he puts his finger to his lips before walking out the door. So in the warehouse, Holmes and Watson are interrogating the owner that we saw at the beginning. His tailcoat's gone. He's got like a lab coat on now. Normally, we sell the busts without decoration, but Mr. Hudson ordered that whole uniform be painted. It was expertly done. He's speaking in a German accent. And made into a very special issue. In terms of the construction, however, there's no reason why the 6 Napoleons we sold to him should be different from the hundreds of others. You see, the 2 molds are poured together and filled with plaster to make each bust, and he's showing them the process. Are they solid? Holmes says. Solid? Yes, of course. I'm a naturalist. And I'm like, okay. Why does that mean these should be solid? Then they are placed in a special room to dry and afterwards stored. The wholesale price is 6 shillings, but retail will get 12 or more. I think this is where the confusion about the shillings came in.
I was just making.
Okay, and we'll get. I can't think of a reason someone would wish to destroy them. Holmes holds up a tool in front of his face that looks something like a scalpel. I can't think of a reason someone would wish to destroy them, the owner says, and Holmes says, or murder for them. And one of the workers looks up at him. This worker looks Italian.
Yes.
But he doesn't say anything. Murder, says the owner. And he abruptly leaves, going into his office. Holmes and Watson follow, and the owner closes the door. So your interest in the molding process had ulterior motives, says the owner.
I thought you were just here on a tour for a reason.
Right. Herr Mandelstam, I wonder if you happen to recognize the man in this photograph. And Holmes holds up the photo of Beppo. That rascal! Yes, indeed, I know him very well, Mandelstam says. He's very angry. This has always been a respectable establishment, and the only time we ever had the police in here was over this fellow. About a year ago, he knifed another Italian in the street and ran in here with the police on his heels. Was his name Beppo by any chance? Watson says. Beppo. Like really mad. Yes. His second name I never knew. Serve me right for employing a man with such a face. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But
he's excessively ugly or something.
He's not, though.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just like, I don't understand what's wrong with these people.
But he was a good workman, one of the best. Do you happen to remember exactly when he was arrested? Holmes asks. I could check the pay lists. And Mandelstam opens a dusty notebook. Literally everything at Gelder is coated in plaster dust. According to Morse Hudson's records, you sent him 6 Napoleons on June the 3rd of last year, Holmes says. That is correct. Beppo last collected his wages on May the 20th of that same year, Mandelstam says. Then he must have been arrested sometime the following week, Watson says, as Holmes goes to the window overlooking the workshop. And the workshop's filled with young Italian men in aprons, all coated in plaster dust. The one who had been staring at Holmes raises his eyes up, and he's glaring at him again. Well, no doubt the police have the exact details. The young Italian survived, so Beppo went to prison for only 1 year. We have a cousin of his working here, Mandelstam says.
Yeah, so I assume that's the worker who's been staring at them.
Yeah. Perhaps you should wish to speak with him. Yeah. Giving Holmes the stink eye, this cousin is. No, says Holmes, not a word to the cousin, I beg of you. This matter is very important, and the further I go with it, the more important it seems. I only thought his cousin might know when Beppo is to be released, Mandelstam says. Herr Mandelstam, if my surmises are correct, our friend Beppo has been out of jail for at least 11 days, Holmes tells him. And Mandelstam looks absolutely shocked. He sits down, he's muttering to himself in German, and the scene closes. Then at 221B, and this is a funny scene, Lestrade is waiting in Holmes's chair. It must be 6 o'clock.
And he looks very bored.
Yes. Holmes's Persian slipper with the tobacco in it is dangling from the mantelpiece. And I was noticing it. It looks like a woman's or a boy's size, too small for Holmes to wear. The folio that Holmes was reading is on the table next to Lestrade. Outside of 221B, Holmes is crowing, "Hey, Watson, Harker has baited the trap for us. The press is a very valuable institution if only one knows how to use it." And he nods at the newsie, who's hawking papers on Baker Street. The headline is huge, and it says, "Kensington outrage, murder by a madman." And Watson smiles, "Very cunning, Holmes." "Thank you, Watson," Holmes says in triumph. And they go up to Lestrade, who is staring first at his foot.
Yeah, he's extending his leg, pointing his foot, twiddling his thumb.
But then he's looking at the slipper. Like, yeah, this is not a slipper for a man. What the hell is this slipper doing here?
Well, that's why it's being used for tobacco.
Exactly, yes.
It had no other use for Holmes.
And then he starts sneaking a peek at the folio that's next to him, the one that Holmes was reading before when the episode opened. Holmes is quietly watching from the doorway, and he's summoning Watson, and they're both grinning. They duck back into the hall, and then they start making all kinds of noise, coughing, exclaiming. Lestrade leaps up from the chair and stands with his back to the mantel like he's been there the whole time. "Lestrade," Holmes says, and he's smiling, is pretending to be hearty and welcoming, which Holmes never is. "Please sit down," says Watson, also smiling very widely and gesturing to Watson's own chair, not the chair that Lestrade had been sitting in, which Holmes promptly occupies. Holmes holds up the folio and shoots Lestrade a knowing glance. So Lestrade knows he's been caught peeking. "What luck, Mr. Holmes?" Lestrade says kind of arrogantly, and it would seem that he's had some luck. "We've had a very busy day, not entirely wasted. I can trace each of the busts now from the beginning," Holmes says. "The busts? Well, of course, you have your own methods, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Not for me to say a word against them, but I think I've done a better day's work than you." At this, Lestrade looks positively smug. Like, he's making a double chin and grinning.
Yes. And I do love that he looks smug when he thinks he's beaten Holmes, but he doesn't harbor any grudge when Holmes beats him.
Exactly. Yes. And Lestrade says, "I've identified the dead man," which we know he was dying to do. "Splendid. Who is it?" Watson says. "Pietro Venucci, son of a respectable Italian tradesman, but involved with a secret political society," Lestrade says. "Red anarchist," Watson says. "You've been talking to Morse Hudson, haven't you?" Lestrade says. "Do go on, Lestrade," says Holmes impatiently. "I refer, of course, to the mafia," and the way they pronounce it over there is mafia, which, as you may know, enforces its decrees by assassination. Obviously, our murderer broke the rules in some fashion, and Pietro is put on his track, possibly with that photograph to aid identification. They meet, but Pietro receives his own death wound in the scuffle. Holmes applauds as Lestrade sits back in his chair. His picture, his face is the picture of pure self-satisfaction. And it just occurred to me, The scene where Pietro's father, Venucci Sr., is in the morgue. He looks like, okay, so he's a mafioso. We know that. He snuck in. And nobody knew it. It was just a way for the show to show us that it was his son. It just occurred to me just now. Because mafiosi are sneaky. Holmes, yes, excellent, Lestrade, but I don't quite follow your explanation of the destruction of the busts, Holmes says. And Lestrade literally throws his head back and laughs. Oh, the busts! You can never get those busts out of your head. The busts are nothing. Petty larceny, 6 months at most. No, 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 it's murder we're really investigating, and I tell you, I am gathering all the threads into my hands. And the next stage, Watson wants to know, we have an inspector who's made a specialty, in the way they say it, their speciality, of the Italian quarter. I shall go down there with him, find the man in that photograph you're carrying, arrest him for murder. He looks over at Holmes. What do you say? Will you come with us?
You are guilty of appearing in a torn photograph.
Right, right. I think not. I fancy Chiswick as the address most likely to find him, Holmes says. And Lestrade is boggled. Chiswick?
Is an affluent district in London.
Yes. And also one of the addresses that Morse Hudson gave them. But of course, Watson was not at Morse Hudson's shop. So this is coming completely out of left field for him.
Lestrade.
Yes. If you and some of your men will come with us to Chiswick tonight, I will go to the Italian quarter with you tomorrow, and there will be no harm in the delay. I suggest you dine with us, and then you're welcome to the sofa. A few hours sleep will do us all good. I don't intend to leave the house before 11, and it is unlikely that we should be home before morning. And Lestrade looks absolutely nonplussed. But Mr. Holmes! Holmes holds up his hand and shakes his head. In the meantime, I have a letter to send by express messenger. He gets up and heads to the hallway and bellows out, almost in a sing-song voice, Mrs. Hudson! Mrs. Hudson!
Yeah, and we cannot pretty much assume here that Lestrade is unmarried because there's clearly nobody waiting for him.
Right. Either that or his wife is used to him being gone on police work for extended periods of time.
Overnight.
So we're back in the mafioso house, the Venucci house, and we see Lucrezia sitting on a red sofa. And a lot of these furnishings are red or cherry stained. It's gorgeous. She's in the room where Pietro was yelling at her and slapping her. She's gazing out the window and dressed in black. And she's holding a little book. The mafioso Venucci Sr. comes in and she stands up, looking defiant. He yanks the book out of her hand and she says, "No!" And he holds up a tiny golden gun and says, "Questo something." And then, I regret that my Italian has disintegrated over the last 10 years or so. Because I remember the last time I watched this episode, I was able to understand them, and I can't anymore. And there's no translation.
No, yeah, right.
So Venuccio Sr. is very angry, but Lucrezia is angry too. She responds with passion and obstinacy. They glare at each other, and he stalks away, and she yells, "Papa!" And I'm not clear on what that scene is supposed to mean. Do you have any thoughts?
I don't know. I guess he was saying he was going to go out and kill Beppo.
But Pietro already had. Beppo had already killed. Oh, I see what you mean. That he was going to go get.
Yeah.
Make sure he got.
Right. I guess.
It's yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they had subtitled the Italian. I don't know why they didn't. They subtitle things, in other languages in this series.
Yeah, and these aren't small scenes.
No.
There's
plot
of dialogue.
Holmes is in his bedroom. He's standing on a chair with a large folder, and he's just throwing papers all over the floor.
I can see that being obviously exasperating for Mrs. Hudson, but I really love that character.
Mm-hmm. He does it all the time.
Yeah.
He finds what he's looking for. Meanwhile, Watson is snoring in his armchair. Lestrade is asleep with a blanket and pillow on the very uncomfortable sofa.
He looks very comfortable.
He does. He's made himself, yes. But oh my God, that sofa just looks so flimsy.
Yeah.
Holmes sneaks out into the hall because there's an entryway by his room to the hall for their coats and hats, and then comes back in the front way saying, 11 o'clock, gentlemen, on your feet. And they grumble awake. And Holmes says, Watson, I think you've been overgenerous with the port. You've been frugal enough with your information, Lestrade says. And a bell tinkles outside. That will be our four-wheeler. Don't forget your revolver, Watson, and bring the rugs, Holmes says. He's rubbing his hands with glee.
Yeah.
So now
Rugs are like lap blankets.
yes. And it's his turn to do the rousting here. This outing wouldn't be inspired by your ED fix, would it? Lestrade says. ED fix, Watson corrects him. And actually, it's pronounced ED fix. Those plaster busts, Lestrade says. I have great hopes, Lestrade. In fact, I am betting it's exactly 2-1 that if you come with us tonight, you'll have the murderer in custody before the sun rises, Holmes says. I'm not a betting man, says Lestrade. Then you have
Watson is, so it's fine.
Then you have nothing to lose, Holmes says, except a good night's sleep, Watson mutters, and Lestrade agrees. He's putting on his hat very grumpily as Watson's getting his gun, and they're all going out. So in Chiswick, it's obviously nighttime. Holmes is in the backyard of Mr. Josiah Brown's house behind the shrubbery. A cat is yowling, an owl's hooting. He goes into a little outbuilding where Lestrade and Watson are sitting, shivering, and Watson sneezes. Watson, if you caught a cold, it's your fault. You left the rugs behind, Holmes says. And Watson apologizes, and Lestrade asks the time. Watson shows him his watch. They're cold. They're bored. Don't suppose we can smoke, can we? Lestrade asks, hopefully. Nope, says Holmes. Thought as much, says Lestrade. Are your men in position? Holmes says. Oh, yes, he says. And Watson pulls out a white paper bag from his pocket. Have a humbug, he says. Humbugs are peppermint candy.
Yeah, it's a hard candy.
Watson, this is no time for humbugs, scolds Holmes. They're apparently not to have any fun. Then Beppo is dashing across the yard. The music heightens, and Watson, Holmes, and Lestrade are following at a distance. There's a great scene of their three hats rising up from, from behind a hedge.
Yes.
Beppo climbs up the side of the house. Is that who you were expecting? Lestrade says. Beppo, says Watson. Good name for a monkey, Lestrade says, because of the man's agility in climbing.
Right. But it's also in keeping with
racism.
Positively simian. And I just wonder if the actors were uncomfortable saying things like this when they were filming.
It was the early 1990s. I don't think so. Honestly. And also they could hide behind, that was how it was back then. But yeah, prejudice never really goes away.
Yeah.
So Beppo goes in a window and Holmes says, he'll leave by the back door. How do you know that? Lestrade says. Because all the other doors are locked, Holmes says. So presumably the letter he so urgently dispatched was to Mr. Brown telling him to lock all the doors except the back one and leave the window open for Beppo to climb in. It's a trap. Beppo picks up the last bust and gazes at it like it's treasure. Well, it's actually not the last bust. It's the second to last.
Yes.
He races out the door, jumps over the steps down to the patio. He begins smashing the busts, and Holmes leaps on him. And Beppo's laughing again, like he did in that other scene, and there are police whistles. Watson pulls his gun out. They pin him to the ground. The cops rush over. I mean, this man is cackling. As Holmes is going through the broken pieces of the bust, an older gentleman in a silk robe and mutton chops, really big ones, comes out and says, "Oh dear, it's smashed." I guess Holmes didn't think to put that in his letter. Holmes looks up at him and drops the piece that he's holding. Mr. Josiah Brown. And you, no doubt, are Sherlock Holmes, Brown says. And Holmes salutes him with a finger. Like it's a great little gesture. I had the note you sent by express messenger, and I did exactly as you told me. Following your instructions, we locked every door so as to lead him to the back. I'm glad, very glad to see you have the rascal. Now I hope, gentlemen, that you will come and partake in some refreshment. Brown is clearly excited to be part of the crime solving.
As I would too if Sherlock Holmes sent me a note and said, "Hey, can I borrow your backyard for something?"
And your house, and oh, that bust that you bought. Brown's also very clearly taken with Holmes' celebrity.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, Holmes says. The hour is rather late. Good night. And Brown's face just falls. Oh, good night. And they start to leave. Lestrade, Holmes says, pausing, if you will come around to Baker Street tonight at 6 o'clock, I hope to be able to show you that you still have not grasped the full meaning of this business. And I mean, Holmes really likes summoning people to 221B at 6 o'clock in the evening. Seems to be like, that's his time.
Yes.
Oh, I think you'll find my theory of the mafia will work out all right, Mr. Holmes, Lestrade says. Good night, Lestrade, and Holmes and Watson head to the taxi, which is waiting for them outside Brown's house, and Lestrade and his cops take Beppo to the station. And now, Watson, I commend to you the universal answer to almost all problems, Holmes says, as the carriage pulls away. What is that, Holmes? Watson says. Sleep, replies Holmes. And yeah, he's right. Sleep is everything.
Yes.
The next morning, I guess presumably after a good night's sleep, Watson is at the barber's, listening while the barber shaves him. He's listening to a pet canary in a cage just above him. And then, because his ears are already perked, he hears Holmes outside speaking Italian to the mafioso, to Vannucci, who's in a carriage. Still with the shaving cream on his face, Watson gets up and he goes to the window of the barbershop. Ecco, Signor Holmes, the Vannucci says, handing Holmes a piece of paper. Grazie, Signor, Holmes says, and Vannucci's carriage departs. Holmes turns to the barbershop window. Morning, Watson! And Watson is utterly mystified. At 6 p.m., Lestrade is in 221B reading from a little notebook while Mrs. Hudson's brought up the tea. We never see Mrs. Hudson in this episode.
Yeah.
Since the manager of Gelder and Company was mainly responsible for Beppo's initial arrest, we see the breaking of the busts as a pathetic attempt to revenge himself, and it was possibly the senseless acts of violence which transgressed the mafia's code of behavior and led to the murder of young Vannucci. There. I think that takes care of those.
I have seen The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, and I am an expert on the mafia.
Yes. I think this takes care of those details you mentioned last night, don't you, Mr. Holmes? And Lestrade's smugness is not to be underestimated. Holmes, meanwhile, is busy with a couple of, I don't know, like a white solution and a red solution in like bottles, and the envelope that's given to him by the mafioso. Holmes, says Watson. The doorbell rings, and Holmes says, ha! And then he turns to Watson and says, yes, Watson? What do you think of Lestrade's theory? I'm sure they have the greatest interest, but I regret to say I've not listened to a word of them. Forgive my inattention, Lestrade. I had rather a late night, Holmes says. He's holding up the envelope. What do you think I had? Lestrade says. There's a knock at the door, and Holmes rises up, goes to the mantel, and puts his head in his hand for some reason.
Yeah, with his back to the door, he's posing.
Right.
Kind of like Lestrade did when
yes,
Watson returning.
And it's an elderly gentleman with a cloth bag. Is Mr. Sherlock Holmes here? And Holmes turns around very abruptly, throws his arm up in a balletic gesture as if to say, here I am. It's very dramatic. The man's face brightens. I fear I'm a little late, but the trains were very awkward. No matter. Have you brought the item? The man looks around suspiciously at Watson and Lestrade, but Holmes reassures him they're okay. You said in your telegram that Mr. Hudson had given you my address, the man says. Mr. Sandalford of Reading, Watson exclaims. It's those busts again, Lestrade says. He's very disgusted. Correct, Lestrade, says Holmes. Did he also tell you just how much my wife paid for it, Sandalford says. No, he did not. Well, sir, I am an honest man, though not a very rich one, and she only gave 15 shillings for it.
But that's about 116 pounds today.
And I think you ought to know that before I take the 10 pounds from you that you offered in your telegram.
That's 1,550 pounds today.
So he's making 900 pounds.
Yeah, I'd sell it.
Oh, so your scruple does you much honor, Mr. Sandalford, but I have stated my price, and I shall stick to it, Holmes tells him, and he takes the bust from him. You know, my wife has always maintained there is a marked resemblance between myself and the emperor. Can't say that I see it myself, says Sandalford, and they're unwrapping the bust. It's wrapped up in cloth, and they both look at it skeptically. Does not look like Sandalford. Then Holmes puts it on the mantelpiece. Again, it's ugly.
Yes.
If you will sign this paper in front of witnesses, Holmes says, going over to his table, it is simply to say that you transfer every possible rights that you would ever have in the bust to me. Sandalford sits down, he picks up a pen, dips it in the inkwell. Happy to, Mr. Holmes. Happy, happy, happy. And he signs. I am a methodical man, Holmes says, and one never knows what turn events may take afterwards. Here is your 10-pound note. Good evening, Mr. Sandalford. And then he's...
And all of that is your clue that, oh, maybe I shouldn't sell it. Actually, I'm going to take this home, Mr. Holmes.
Right.
Smash it myself and see what's in it.
Holmes is hustling Sandalford out of 221B as politely as he can muster, which is not that politely. He's practically shoving him out the door as Sandalford is burbling on and on about what a kind gesture this all was. Holmes comes back, and then he does that trick where he yanks the tablecloth out from under the tea service with a flourish, and the cups and saucers all stay where they are on the table.
That would never happen if I tried to do it.
Me either, yeah. Watson and Lestrade are staring at him. Holmes puts the cloth on a different table, and then he throws a black square of silk on top of it. I don't know why.
I guess because the inside is white.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But the tablecloth is red. I mean, the contrast would still...
I don't know. And he is looking for something black, as we find out.
Which, I mean...
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's just drama. He picks up the bust. He brings it over to the table. He sets it on the square. Now, gentlemen, if you would give me your undivided attention. And suddenly he smashes the bust open. He's got a crowbar there. And Watson and Lestrade jump. They're very startled. I was startled too. I jumped too. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to one of the most precious objects in the world, the famous Black Pearl of the Borgias.
Which is not a real thing.
It is not, no. Holmes holds up this jet black marble-sized pearl. Watson and Lestrade are dumbstruck, but not for long. And then Watson says something. Oh, your legerdemain rivals that of Maskelyne himself. Meaning,
John Neville Maskelyne was a British stage magician in the late 19th and early 20th century, and some of his illusions are still performed today.
He was also an inventor, and he managed a telegraph company and took issue when Marconi invented the wireless. Because Marconi said that it was secure and private. Maskelyne hacked into Marconi's public demo of the technology and brought his own message.
It's not secure and private.
No, made Marconi.
Sorry, did you put a password on this, Marconi?
Yeah, right. It looked like an idiot. Also, Bending the Willow has a bit about this scene. And the author says the deftness and skill and, you know, the flourishing and whatnot are in a sense typical of Holmes, but the business is Brett's, not Conan Doyle's, perhaps illustrating the process of osmosis that was occurring at this time. In many ways, Jeremy Brett was blending his own character with that of the detective and becoming a sort of Sherlock Brett or Jeremy Holmes. In doing this, he must have at times been supplementing his own natural effusiveness and gregariousness. The manic depression was taking hold, and colleagues were noting swings in his moods. So, yeah.
Okay.
And Lestrade says, the Borgias pearl has been missing since it disappeared from the Prince of Colonna's bedroom in the Dacre Hotel over a year ago. As you may remember, Lestrade, I was consulted upon the case at the time. Observe and learn.
And he puts the pearl in his pocket as
Right.
he like reveals this evidence board, and nobody says anything for the rest of the episode.
Nope.
Finders keepers, it's mine now.
Right. So the evidence board's covered with a cloth. So he whips the cloth off. There's so much cloth whipping happening. The moment the name Venucci surfaced in this case, I immediately became intrigued. The princess of Colonna's maid for some time had been one Lucrezia Venucci. Suspicion fell upon her, and it was proved that she had a brother in London, but we failed to trace any connection between them. Beppo was the connection. He had been courting Lucrezia Venucci for some time. The whole time he's gesturing at these newspaper articles with drawings of Marina Sirtis on them. And then he produces the other half of the photo with Lucrezia and tacks it up next to the half with Beppo. Where did you get the... that's Watson. Papa Venucci, says Holmes. When the Venucci family planned to steal the Black Pearl, they used Beppo as a go-between for Lucrezia and her brother. Beppo gleaned enough information to execute the robbery himself and make off with the pearl. Pietro Venucci, the brother, caught up with him outside Gelder's workshop. Beppo stabbed him. He then fled into the warehouse and took refuge in the drawing room. He knew he had only moments in which to conceal the pearl, which would otherwise be found on him when he was searched. Among all the plaster casts drying that day, he made for a batch of 6 that had been earmarked for Morse Hudson, and the base of one of them was still soft. It was an admirable hiding place. And we see Beppo disappearing into the drawing room, closing the doors behind him. He's putting the pearl in one of the statues. He's kind of like thumbing it into the base and then covering up the hole. As soon as Beppo got out of prison, Holmes continues, he managed to find employment with Mr. Morse Hudson and set about tracking the 6 Napoleons down. He found and destroyed 3 of them, but the night he located Harker's, Pietro Venucci, intent on vengeance, accosted him, and this time Beppo slit his throat. With only 2 busts left, it was likely he would try the London one first. Hence our visit to Chiswick, Watson says. Finally, the light comes on. Exactly, Watson. That only left the Reading bust. I bought it in your presence from the owner, and there it lies. And Holmes points to the mess on the table. Watson looks completely delighted because he loves it when his friend gets all salvy. I've seen you handle a good many cases in my time, but I don't know that I ever knew a more workmanlike one than this. Lestrade walks over to Holmes, who is smiling. He likes praise. We're not jealous of you, at Scotland Yard. No, sir, we are proud of you. And if you come down tomorrow, there's not a man from the oldest inspector to the youngest constable who wouldn't be glad to shake you by the hand.
Holmes is nearly in tears at this.
Yeah, he's very touched.
Yes.
Thank you, he says. And he looks into Lestrade's eyes, and then more softly he says, thank you. And Bending the Willow has a bit about this as well. The swiftly changing emotions are clearly mirrored in his expressive features, and especially his eyes, which missed briefly, and we see that, before the cold, calculating machine of a heart reasserts itself.
Yeah, I wrote, then Holmes recovers masculinely.
Yes. Despite Lestrade's praise, we somehow feel sorry for Holmes here. It is a
feeling sorry for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're meant to feel like it's too bad he can't show true emotion.
Yeah, but
yes.
Come on, like men are better about it in media these days.
As you say, he masculinely pulls himself together. Would you get down the Conk Singleton forgery case, please, Watson? So he's not even going to give himself a break between cases. Watson goes.
This is just something to say to break the moment.
Yeah, true. Watson goes over to the filing system by the window, and he's pulling at these leather case files. Holmes opens the door for Lestrade to leave. Goodbye, Lestrade. If any little problem comes your way, I shall be happy, if I can, to give you a hint or two as to its solution, he says. But then he holds out his hand.
Yeah, and it's you can tell it's unusual because Lestrade just looks at his hand for a second or two before shaking it.
Yeah, he's a little stunned.
Yeah.
So off goes Lestrade as Watson's digging out that old folio. Holmes is humming to himself a little bit, and he takes up his violin. Then
plays the theme.
Yes, plays the theme song. Yes. Then we see Lucrezia looking, I don't know, grief-stricken in a carriage outside the prison. Venuccio's outside. He's holding an umbrella against the driving rain as a prison official tacks up something on the door. And it's a death notice. Beppo has been hanged for the murder of
Pietro.
yes, sorry. Venucci, I keep calling him Venuccio. It's Venucci. Rips it from the door and comes back to the carriage. "È finita, Lucrezia," he says, and he hands the notice to her. She says, yeah, it's done. She says nothing, but she tears it up and tosses the pieces through the window of the carriage as they drive past a gate that says Venucci. A beggar woman observes them and then walks away as the episode ends. I'm not sure what that, I mean, is it
I don't.
gate to an estate? Is it a factory?
I feel like they probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
You don't want to end the episode with, wait, what? Where?
Right.
I don't understand. What's going on?
Exactly. No, it's this one could have been so much better editing. Please add translations.
Yes.
I mean, I get that wealthy English people used to spend their gap year in Italy and blah, blah, but
we're not wealthy English people.
No.
We're poor Americans.
I mean, if it was French, we probably could have gotten it, but no.
Yeah.
Oh. So, yes, Marina Sirtis is kind of the final say in this episode.
And it's her whole demeanor around Beppo's death that makes me think she was over him when he killed Pietro.
Well, it's clear that Beppo, in stealing the pearl, that she was actually set up to steal.
Right. And it sounds like he was trying to steal it for himself instead of handing it over to them.
Right. So he screwed.
Which was why Pietro was screaming horror at her.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. She was allowing herself to be wooed by someone who had done harm to the family.
Yeah.
Although the family had done harm to the prince.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just betrayal all the way down. Yeah, very complicated. But oh my God. You know, I thought I liked this episode when we were talking about it last week. I was like, oh yay, but I don't like it very much anymore.
Yeah. What I like about it is the end bit at Baker Street, Lestrade's speech to
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
That's why I like it. I just like having Lestrade in a story. I like their interactions.
Mm-hmm.
I like his interpretation of the character.
Yes, I do too.
The Italians, I wish they hadn't done the Italian scenes.
I know. But I mean, Conan Doyle, but they also didn't do every single story in this series that Conan Doyle wrote.
Yeah, but Conan Doyle didn't have the Italian scenes.
That's right. He didn't.
This is all from Watson's point of view.
Right. Well, and we know Watson is sort of benighted and close-minded. So the guy who plays Lestrade, Colin Jeavons, Jeavons, he's a Welsh actor. He had a big part in the British House of Cards.
Who's he on that?
Tim Stamper, who he was in 4 episodes out of
6.
Out of 4.
I really liked the original House of Cards. I really like watching Ian Richardson. according to the BritBox lineup, because that's the order we're going in,
Yeah.
is Sign of Four. And I think one of the first adaptations that I saw, or at least one of the first I can remember of Sherlock Holmes, was Ian Richardson playing Holmes in The Sign of Four.
Oh, interesting. I mean, again, I always say there are 12 actors in the UK, and spin a wheel and see who we wind up with. Yeah, I mean, well, The Sign of Four, that's a long one. I'm going to have to get up early.
Yeah. Well, we're only doing the first part.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good to know. So any further thoughts on this? I mean, look, I live on Staten Island with
a lot of Italian
a
people.
lot of it's 40% Italian here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and then 20% Irish, and then there's everybody else. It also has the largest Sri Lankan and Liberian communities outside of the countries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's much more diverse than people give it credit for.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
We have actually a Sri Lankan restaurant here that has a Michelin star.
Wow.
That I still have not gone to, and I've lived here longer than 10 years.
You have to go and tell me how it is.
I definitely have to go. Yeah, it's called La Caruana.
Oh.
And yeah, the only issue is it's not right outside my building.
Understood.
I mean, outside I live next to a restaurant. I never go there. I never order from there because all they serve is roast beef sandwiches and booze. And it's frequented by people who are of a different political persuasion than me.
Uh-huh.
It's an ex-cop and ex-firefighter who have opened the restaurant. So
Interesting.
anyway, yeah, the Italian pieces, I feel like they didn't, because I live among so many Italian people, they didn't do right by them in this episode. I mean, hugely racist. Also, the whole mafia. So the mafia is not what, anyway, people think it is. I mean, there are mafiosi on Staten Island. To this day, there are, but they're not glamorous. They're and also kind of, well, I won't say stupid, but it's in a way, although it's murder, it's a job.
Yeah.
And they're working their job. It's not like it's no great mystery. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, nobody ever gets the mafia right. Even the Godfather made it glamorous.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't have anything else on this, so that's all from us this week. If you've enjoyed the show and haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to support us, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And tell your friends. And join us next week when we'll be discussing The Sign of Four, Part 1.
Which is where Mary Morstan comes in.
Yeah.
And there's a great character actor called Ronald Lacey who, we'll talk more about him next week, but oh my God, he is so much fun to watch. He was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But yes, the melting Nazi.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait.
I know, right? Yes, a sweaty man with glasses. Yes. So, yes, next week it is. And even though this episode wasn't my favorite, it's always so much fun to do these.
Yes, it is.
So, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.